movement in space and so on. But also the calculus. Between Sir Isaac Newton and Leibniz, they invented calculus together, not together, but at the same time. It was needed, the mathematics of the day needed this next step, and so both of them were aware of it and working on it. It's kind of funny, if you visit England, Sir Isaac Newton is the genius, right? If you cross the Channel and you visit continental Europe, Leibniz is the person you talk about. So there's a cultural, our team, kind of thing. But it is interesting. There's a book about the two of them, Sir Isaac Newton and Leibniz, called Calculus Wars. They talked about the development of calculus and how they wrote letters to one another claiming to have accomplished something, but not telling the other how. Because that was just really dumb stuff at the time. Now, today, scientists or mathematicians have a rush to publish. They want to get it out there and lay claim to it. And the way you do that is by publishing and showing everybody, this is what I've done. They were trying to hide everything from one another.
So they knew each other, and they were actually like battling back and forth?
Yes. It was really a fun book to read because
Kind of like Tesla has.
So it was fun. But the reason I'm bringing Leibniz up is because as a young man, he visited England. On the way back, though, he stopped in the Netherlands, and he spent 2 weeks with Spinoza. It's the only significant philosopher, really, that I know of that had that much time with Spinoza. And clearly, during that time period, they were reading Spinoza's book, The Ethics, and discussing it, and clearly Spinoza had an impact on Leibniz, which is a dangerous theological impact, and that's because Spinoza is a pantheist. He believes that everything is God. So remember my quiz question last class, even though we didn't discuss it yet at all, was do you believe that Spinoza's right in arguing that God is everything? So let me get to Spinoza's Ethics. Hopefully we can. Let's just go right to the book itself. So I did mention part of the impact of Descartes, and the part of what makes things modern is the method, and the method is kind of an algebraic method. So notice they start off talking about, okay, so let's define our terms, what are we talking about? And so you have these definitions to start off with, and they're kind of tedious, but it's very technical. So let's see what he's doing here. By that which is self-caused, I mean that of which the essence involves existence. Remember, Aquinas separates essence and existence. You get, the existence would be the material world, and essence is kind of the abstract, universal characteristic of the categories that Aristotle talked about. Or that of which the nature is only conceivable as existent. So there's actually only one thing that fits in this category. I mean, I can think of this table as being here, but I can imagine that 20 years ago this table didn't exist, right? Well, for something that you can't conceive of as not existing, it's really only God. Because by the definition of God is that than which nothing greater can be thought, which is the theological definition that we see since Anselm, right? you end up believing that, well, you can't conceive of that than which nothing greater can be thought, unless it also exists, because otherwise it's not that than which nothing greater can be thought, right? Very annoying, but, hey, go with this, see how this works, right? So the only thing that of which the nature is only conceivable as existent would be that, right? Because everything else is finite, temporary. It could come and go, and will actually, right? We conceive of everything as being, it's made and it's gone, But by definition, God is not possibly not existing. By definition, whether we actually can conceive of it. Remember, you don't actually have to conceive of it. That's one of the importance of why it's framed in the negative, because if you framed it as a positive, you could always point out, hey, hey, I've never seen that, or whatever, right? 2, a thing is called finite after its kind, when it can be limited by another thing of the same nature. For instance, a body is called finite because we always conceive another greater body. So also a thought is limited by another thought. But a body is not limited by thought, nor a thought by a body. So that's pretty clear, right? By substance, and this is an Aristotelian concept of substance, I mean that which is in itself and is conceived through itself. In other words, that of which a conception can be formed independently of any other conception. What would that be? That turns out to be God as well. By attribute, I mean that which the intellect perceives as constituting the essence of substance. So every substance has attributes, how we describe them. Right? By mode, I mean the modifications of substance, or that which exists in and is conceived through something other than itself. What the heck is he talking about there? Mode. Basically, he's going to conceive of 2 different modes. The one mode would be the physical substance, and the other would be the kind of mode that we think of as abstraction. And by the way, human beings can only conceive of, this is something that comes in later, that we can conceive of things in those 2 modes. But conceivably, there are many more modes, perhaps even an infinite number of modes. Well, of course, the only one that could have that kind of conceptual ability would be someone that's infinite, and of course, there's only one that would be God as well, right? So, definition of God. By God, I mean a being absolutely infinite. That is, a substance consisting in infinite attributes, of which each expresses eternal and infinite essentiality. This is, if you take the theological definition of God as that in which nothing greater can be taught, and you try to interpret, okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, it's the infinite. No limit, on anything. Of course, you have lots of different kinds of infinite, so we can get into problems there, but that's not an issue for him at this point. He's just defining God as a substance consisting in infinite attributes. Explanation. I say absolutely infinite, not infinite after its kind, for of a thing infinite only after its kind, infinite attributes may be denied. Maybe this is the kind of thing, this is an infinite series of points from point A to B. It's smaller than this infinite line. Did that work? This is smaller than this one. But they both have infinite number of points. And that's just, yeah, everybody knows that, right? By the way, the funnest book on the infinite is Wallace's book, Everything and More. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. If you ever get the chance. David Foster Wallace, Everything and More. He was paid to write that. And he was tasked, here, would you write this? We need a book on this. Would you write it? And he said, sure. Okay. Pardon?
Just casually writes a book.
I misspelled something somewhere, but it is actual history of math, and it's all about, but it's hilarious. It is hilarious. However, so God, I say absolutely infinite, not infinite after its kind. I don't know if you can follow me in this here, etc., etc. And next, that thing is called free, which exists solely by the necessity of its own nature, and of which the action is determined by itself alone. A quick skip down. By eternity, I mean existence itself, insofar as it is conceived necessarily to follow, etc., etc. Okay. So, next, once you have your definitions, you go to the axioms. Axiom, remember, means you have to believe this. You know, it's axiomatic. You have to believe it. In other words, these are faith. Aquinas, I didn't mention this, but Aquinas, if you try to frame the different theologians we talked about, Augustine is faith-seeking understanding. And you, with Anselm, you get to believe is to believe is to understand, some way. But by the time you get to Aquinas, you get faith and reason are the two wings on which we fly. I love that as a metaphor, because you have to be reasonable, you have to think, and for Aquinas, if faith has something that reason shows to be false, then you have to drop the faith, because reason overrides faith, right? But there's so much you need faith for. You can't just reason without beliefs. For example, for me to believe that 1 + 1 equals, to use 1 + 1 equals 2, I have to believe that 1 is a number. And that there's that sequence 1, 2, 3, right? There's axioms that I need. 0 is a number. The sequence of numbers. I should have told you this one too back in the day. This is later. Can I just go, axioms? So here's, 0 is a natural number. Okay. For every natural number x equals x, that is, equality is reflexive. That's a belief. And by the way, it's false in some contexts. So when I say 1 equals 1, right? Actually, this one is on the left and this one is on the right, so they're not actually equal. Sorry about that, but it's just true. There's some context where you could find something wrong with practically everything. And that's true, which is paradoxical, because if it's true, then there's something wrong with it. Sorry, okay. For all natural numbers x and y, if x equals y, then y equals x. That is, equality is symmetric. Well, you get the idea. There's axioms for mathematics. And if you don't believe in these, you can't play that game. I mean, you can't do mathematics, right? So, you can't play football if you don't agree on rules, like what's a yard? 10 yards is first down, you kick through that, thing, and you get a point, get an extra point, or 3 if you're far enough away.